Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, where we explore the history and people of Troy, New York, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, John Salka. I am thrilled to welcome our next guest, Scott Womer, a songwriter, musician, event producer, and founder of Song City, a creative venture focused on the local songwriting community, which kicks off their fourth season this September, September 9th, 2025. Scott is a Capital Region native who relocated to Nashville in the 90s, where he built a career in the music industry through writing, recording sessions, and marketing at record labels before returning to the Capital Region area in the early 2000s, right to Troy. Song City produces multi-genre songwriter showcases and yearly writing retreats. Scott's goal is to provide support and community to local songwriters and share their incredible talent with the Capital District and beyond. As a recovering musician and songwriter myself, I'm really excited to have Scott on the show. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, John. How are you? Thanks so much for having me here.
No, thank you for agreeing to do this. I know we were kicking around an interview for a while, and I'm glad we were finally able to put something together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to step all the way back to the very start of your story. So, how did your career in the music industry begin, and how did it lead to a move to Nashville? Were you active in the local music community in the capital region?
That's a great question, actually. I would say yes, but uh, not necessarily in the way I am now. I grew up with a father who was a music teacher and parents that were incredibly involved with music and the arts and had a real heart for community and creating community amongst local artists, especially those, teenagers and college students and people like that. So from the time I can remember, I was setting up sound equipment and going on little tours and doing rehearsals every week and involved with all sorts of music events. And that taught me a lot. It taught me obviously a lot about music, and it taught me a lot about community. It taught me a lot about what it means to have people investing into as an artist, or doing the same for someone else and investing into other people. So yeah, that's really where it began. Was this not for profit that my parents were running at the time, and this would be in the 80s. Um, and then that led also to working in some local churches. At that point, a lot of churches were hoping to build a music program that was actually high quality and creative and using the people that were in the congregation to the best of their ability. And so I found myself in a couple different situations like that in the local area, where I was just getting really it was kind of a dream job in some ways, because they were paying me to work with songwriters and filmmakers and graphic designers and poets and different kinds of artists, and help them grow as artists and help them um, give back to the community, whether it's the church community or the larger community, which was really an incredible job. Um, and did that for years and absolutely loved it. So that's really what gave me kind of my initial start into um, music and songwriting and what that means in a community setting.
Were there specific artists or songwriters and musicians, bands that you were really into as a kid that kind of inspired you to start writing songs yourself?
Um, there were, but at the time, we were in a church environment, so they were people you've probably never even heard of, um, because they don't quite get the recognition probably that they deserve. But there were, I grew up because it was kind of the 70s and 80s. There was a lot of folk music going on around my house. I have fond memories of my mother and I sitting at the breakfast table, listening to the Carpenters and things like that, and just growing up loving music that way.
So how did that translate into moving to Nashville and sort of pursuing a music industry career, writing songs, working in studios? What exactly was that? Did that entail?
Yeah, I had a lot of friends in the area, obviously, that were musicians, and it became kind of a natural thing for a lot of these musicians to say, I've kind of grown to a place where I can't grow anymore here, which is obviously not really true, but sometimes you feel that way, that you need a change of environment. And they would move down to Nashville and then realize that there's a huge difference between being uh, even a popular artist in a city like Albany or Troy, and being a popular successful artist in a city like Nashville is very different. And it often, I think, became kind of disheartening to them because they would go down hoping that they were going to kind of make it, and realize that there are thousands of people that do exactly what they do, and they would come back a little down about that. Um, but I also kind of had a desire to learn, to try to learn more about songwriting and musicianship and all these things. So we decided to move down to Nashville, and this would have been in the mid '90s or so. And we're down there for about 6 years, and really tried to look at it from an attitude of not trying to make it, but what can I learn from this? Who can I be around? If I can just be around all these amazing musicians and songwriters, and take something back with me. I don't think I ever thought I was going to stay there or become some big star. I just wanted to learn more, and was down there for about 6 years or so, and came back. And I will certainly attribute so many things that I do today to those days in Nashville and those people I befriended while I was there and invested into me.
Did you work with any like notable artists or any artists that you were really excited to work with, like when you were down there? What was your experience and your interactions with sort of maybe up and comers or names that we may know now?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was working for a record label that was a Christian record label. So we were working with people like Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. And I can remember riding the elevator with MC Hammer and just thinking, like, I've just made it at this point. I can remember every Saturday going to the Pancake Pantry and seeing Michael McDonald and his family sitting in the booth next to me. So there are those moments, but the people that I think I really learned from were just the friends that I had that were musicians and songwriters that were just kind of at that next level beyond me, you know, and I think that's where I kind of got inspired.
So you came back to the capital region sometime in the early 2000s, and you know, more recently you've come back to, I think, the songwriting um, universe. I guess was there kind of like a break from when you came back? Did you kind of leave the industry and then you kind of picked it up with Song City?
Yeah, I came back and went back and worked for a few other churches, kind of with the knowledge that I learned there. I feel like I was better enabled to um, pull out from musicians and songwriters what I think they really had, that maybe they just hadn't been encouraged to really pursue. And I think that that was a really important time. Um, but I think that as I came out of that time, I also decided that I was going to begin pursuing my own music and start writing for myself, not in any particular genre or mind view or worldview, but just whatever I was feeling at the time. And that was right around the COVID period. So this is a story that a lot of musicians will tell, obviously, where we were stuck inside and thought, well, I might as well write and record some music, and did that. Worked on a an EP that I wrote, recorded, and put out right during that COVID period. Um, and that was a big step, I feel like, for me to step out as a solo artist in a sense and not be surrounded by all these people. Uh, but probably the negative side of that was put out the EP, and then I said, no, now what do I do? What what do you do once you've done the album and marketed it and put it out? I don't know what to do now. And that's when I began to realize that what I needed was a community artists and songwriters that were already beyond me in the Capital District. And that's the very beginnings of Song City. At the time, it was just going to look like a playlist that you could find on iTunes or whatever that was local musicians. And then that began to look like, well, what if we were all just part of this big group of people that was sharing equipment and helping with studio time and songwriting together, doing all these kinds of things. Just because I knew that that's what I needed as a writer. And if I did, I assumed other people did. And that's really where the desire to begin to, the more I met these amazing musicians in the Capital District, the more I wanted other people to see them. And I think that was where things turned for me, where it almost became less about doing my own music and or more like, how can I get everyone else to hear about all these musicians that are around?
So, for those who aren't familiar with Song City, can you just kind of explain the events, the format, and how you sort of came to put this kind of thing together in the first place?
Yeah, yeah. That goes back to Nashville. And it was such an amazing time because there was just clubs everywhere and that you could see any genre happening there. One of the great places that I found while I was down there was a place called the Bluebird Cafe, which I had heard about and had never experienced before. Wasn't really sure what to expect. And it was a songwriting circle venue. It was fairly small venue, and I can remember walking in the first time and just having never seen anything like that, where there's this just four artists in the center of the room facing each other with their piano or their guitar, their mandolin, um, and just going around the circle a few times and just talking about their songs and talking about songwriting in general and their influences and playing these songs for us. Now, most of these people were not necessarily artists, although a lot of uh, more popular artists have come out of the Bluebird. Taylor Swift was discovered by a record exec when she was playing the Bluebird. Keith Urban was discovered at the Bluebird. So many people. But what was more popular at the Bluebird was writers that were kind of staff writers. So they were working for publishing companies in Nashville, and they were really sitting in writing rooms all day, just writing hit song after hit song. And then when these songwriting artists would come out and need a new song for their album, they would go to the publishing company and they would get these songs. So the people that were playing in the circle were not people you had heard of before, but they began to play the songs they'd written, and you realized, oh my gosh, that's that great Dolly Parton song or whatever it was. Um, and so I think that really showed me kind of the importance of songwriting, whether you're a huge star or a guy in a writing room. It's just great writing. And the only thing that really didn't work for me about the Bluebird was just that it was mostly one or two genres, because at that point, this was pre Jack White and people like that moving to Nashville. So it was mostly a country folk Ugrass city at that point. And so I did find it began to get a little boring for me at these songwriting circles because it was all, very similar genres. Um, so if we flip forward then to me coming into contact then with all these great musicians and songwriters in the area, it brought me back to that time at the Bluebird where there was such an appreciation for the artist. And you took away all the flashy lights and all the big staging, and it really came down to a song. And I thought, boy, I wonder if that would work in a place like this. I don't want it to be boring. I was finding myself bored in Nashville in it because of so few genres, and I began to realize, well, wait a minute, why do we not have rock artists and jazz artists and hip hop artists and improvisational artists playing at these things? This is all songwriting. That would make it so much more interesting for me, and I think that those writers need that kind of appreciation. So that's really where Song City began. It just began as a desire to let Capital District know about these amazing songwriters, expand their minds about what songwriting looks like, and possibly more important than those two things would be just being able to invest into local artists and you know give them pay them well and give them a good publicity and a good crowd and all the things that they deserve, you know.
What's the format like? If someone was to buy a ticket, want to come and see Song City, a songwriting session, there's obviously the acts themselves, the writers that perform, and there's the people that attend. What's the format? Give the people kind of a flavor of what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah. When you come in, we are at a room called the Waiting Room, which is right off of Franklin Alley in Troy, between River Street and Broadway. It's an alleyway with great white lights hanging everywhere. You can't miss it. So this room, holds maybe 150 or so in the circle. And when you walk in, you'll find in the center of the room, you'll find four chairs facing each other in the middle of the room, maybe with a keyboard or a guitar or a mandolin or who knows what. And then chairs for the audience surrounding that. So it's in the round, and you're right up close. I mean, there are times where you're almost you're almost touching the chair of the artist that's playing the song because we're all kind of packed in there. Um, and we simply go around that rotation three times. So there's four artists, each playing three songs ultimately. So 12 songs, about an hour and a half or so. And as it becomes their turn again, um, they'll introduce the song. They'll talk about maybe the situation that they wrote it from, or whatever was the inspiration for the song. Um, and then play the song. And it is in a more stripped down fashion, which for some artists is fairly normal, like a folk artist or someone like that is kind of used to them and their guitar or their keyboard or their mandolin or something like that. It gets much more interesting because we try to bring in so many different genres that it becomes a little bit of a challenge for those artists, and I believe, and I think they do too, kind of a fun challenge where they have to figure out, so what does this look like? I'm an electronica band, or I'm a, whatever it is. And now they have to kind of rethink the songs. I can remember a great electronic band called Architrave that's here in town, husband and wife electronic music duo. And I can remember asking them, because their songs were so amazing. I can remember asking them to play Song City. And they thought about it a little bit and they came back and they said, we would love to do it. But can you give us about 6 months to choose these three songs and then figure out how we're going to do this in a stripped down format? And they were kind of excited about that. So that's kind of the fun of it, I think, for them.
You mentioned this earlier in the interview that you had released a sort of EP in 2020. It was called The Ghost. Is that correct?
I was under the moniker Fenton Hardy is my musical moniker, and the album was called The Ghost. Yeah,
So I did get a chance to listen to it, not all of the songs, but I did get a chance to listen to a few of them before the interview, and some of the songs have like a haunting quality about them. And they've got kind of your voice. There's a lot of reverb on there, and it's again the ones that I've heard. They're kind of set against like an Americana sonic landscape. Can you kind of like share what was the inspiration behind some of the tracks that you wrote that's on that EP?
yeah, absolutely. I had never really done much songwriting prior to that. Um, and if I had, it was more church based. So it was things that you were writing really for other people to sing with you, which is very different than where I was at then. And then if we throw in COVID and people, all of us just kind of feeling isolated and unsure of what's going on. Um, and I think I was really trying to figure out, okay, now this is just me. So what does this look like? Who am I really as an artist? Um, and my favorite artists out there are, is Wilco and Radiohead and Sigur Rós and Bon Iver and Jason Isbell. So they all kind of fit into either a more Americana style or kind of an experimental style with a lot of ambience and a lot of atmosphere.
Am I lonely? Less or more? Am I lonely when the ghost walks out the door?
Here you are, you're leading this Song City, these sessions, and you've worked in the industry yourself, but it's kind of fascinating to hear that you yourself are approaching original songwriting for the first time from a standpoint of just 2020, just 5 years ago, and here you are now leading songwriting sessions, not just Song City, but also um, the Ink songwriting sessions, which are
Yeah.
the next one's coming up, I believe, at the Hart Cluett Museum. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that? How did that come together?
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole Inc. program is really, I would put it on my list of some of the most rich, inspiring things that I've ever been a part of, whether gone to or led. Um, Certainly we know, especially if you grew up in the church loves retreats. They love the idea of getting away and having time to yourself and growing and that kind of thing. So I grew up in that kind of a setting, where where it was just kind of normal to get away and encourage other people to get away. um, and I was a avid backpacker and working on my 46, and so there was a lot of time away, and I really grew from those moments of being away with other people or by myself. And I began to think about that as I was trying to help songwriters, just write more and feel more inspired, and realized, oh, a retreat. There's nothing like a good retreat to just get away, and collaborate and have some time to yourself. Yeah, I just think it's so needed today for us to have a chance to get away and to get some time either alone or with other people that are like-minded. And I think, at least for me, that's always incredibly productive, just to clear my mind and be creative. So we created these Ink songwriting retreats for that purpose, so that they would have time to write. They would have people around them that they could collaborate with. Uh, like all things Song City, um, the genres were all over the place. We've had everything from pop, rock, folk, bluegrass, country, hip hop, opera. I mean, you name it. We've kind of had it there, and really tried to also use it as a chance to kind of spoil the artists a little bit, to give them what they deserve, and to have great food and really nice lodging, at an affordable price. And we were able to have things like, we brought in an engineer, just a great engineer, who would set up a studio on the first floor of the lodge. And as they're writing, they could sign up for studio time, and they could work on a demo of what they're writing, and all those types of things. We'd have these just great discussions. And they were really, really some of the greatest things I think I've ever been involved with. Just incredibly inspiring, and relationships that came out of those retreats are relationships that you would then see all of a sudden these people are doing shows together, they're writing together, they're doing all sorts of projects together, um, which was great. One of the things that we've decided to do this year, is to try to cater also to the people that can't necessarily afford a 4-day retreat, or don't have the time off that they can take to go to a 4-day retreat, which I certainly understand. So this year we've kind of pressed pause on the 4-day retreat. We'll bring that back next year. in order to try doing a 1 day retreat. So staying right here in Troy and still getting a chance to get away, allowing 20 people to come to it as opposed to 10 people, doing it at a reasonable price, but trying to include kind of a lot of the tastes that we had from the larger retreats. So 20 people will sign up. They'll meet on in October at the Hart Cluett House. It'll be October 14th, and they'll meet at the Hart Cluett Historical House, which is this incredible old home that has been restored, historically correct, to exactly how it was in the 1800s. I believe it was originally built in 1826. It's right on Second Street here downtown. And we are renting that 4-story home made up of just these little rooms that are all just completely historically correct. And there's kids' nurseries, and there's kitchens, and there's game rooms, and there's huge dining rooms. And it's kind of magical. And we're gonna host 20 artists there, and it'll be a mixture of some group discussion, some solo writing time, some collaborative times amongst artists, some teaching times, some great meals through O'Malley's Oven, who does all of our food for us. And she'll be right there on site, and we'll have 3 meals together. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting time, and I think really inspiring for these artists.
Songwriting is a way of telling stories, and you've kind of alluded to that there, as well as documenting history. You know, you're having this at the Hart Cluett Museum, the Hart Cluett Building in downtown Troy, which I think will probably enrich the songs or the atmosphere to inspire people, which I think is at really like the heart of what songwriting is. And I say this because we're kind of in this era where AI slop songwriting is on the rise on services like Spotify and YouTube. So where do you see songwriting? By the way, when I say AI slop songwriting, I'm using quotes around songwriting. Um, where do you see songwriting, human songwriting, headed in 2025?
Yeah, and I think that the AI version of songwriting, I think it has a small place in the same way that people would use songwriting dictionaries, and they'd use different things to inspire them, or they get a phrase, they'd be part of a songwriting group, and they'd be given a phrase, and they'd have to write a song using that phrase. So I think in that same way, there are times where AI can kind of give us that little push that we need, that little inspiration, um, without doing all the work for us. But I agree that I think that there is something really magical about being in a time or a place where there are things initiating songwriting in you that you would have not experienced in your normal setting, which is why going away for 4 days in the Adirondacks, that can certainly do that. But a house built in 1826 can clearly do that. And it's actually made me kind of excited about the idea of, what does it mean for a room to become a co-writer? That there's something about not just using a kind of blah place to go to so that you're not distracted by the things around you, and instead turn it around and say, what kind of songs would I write if I were sitting in an 1800s baby nursery or grand dining room? We're even going beyond that, and we're having Kathy Sheehan, who's the head historian here, who works out of the Hart Cluett House. And she's going to come in the beginning and actually give some history of the building and tell some of the stories and some of the kind of legends that are happening. Supposedly, there's a butler still in that home that takes the elevator each day, and there's a lot of stories. So I'm really hoping that those 20 songwriters use this as an opportunity to be inspired and be intrigued, and allow their surroundings to push them to a place that maybe they wouldn't have naturally gone in their own writing area.
One of the questions that I try to end every interview with is, how do you enjoy Troy? I know you talk a lot about songwriting, and this is a big part of your life, but how do you sort of enjoy Troy separate from sort of like the songwriting work in Song City and the stuff that you do?
Yeah, and I really do. I love Troy so much. There's no other city that I'd want to live in right now. And I live right here downtown, so everything is walkable. And I could name so many places that I think are great and that I spend time in, whether it's the Ruck or 518 Craft or Dykeski or um, some of the incredible restaurants like Donna's and coffee shops. Coffee shops are incredibly important to me. So to know that I can go to Alias and I can go to Jacob Alejandro and I can go to Stacks and I can do that in an afternoon is makes me very happy. So yeah, I think that we have incredible small businesses and restaurants. I think the people are just very real in Troy, and I really appreciate that. I don't feel like I'm living in the suburbs where people are kind of putting on some kind of a facade. I feel like wherever you're at, good or bad in that moment, I think that people are pretty real in Troy, and I love that. And I don't think there's another city around right now that has the amount of artists and songwriters and musicians that are coming out of Troy, and are playing in Troy. So I think we're incredibly fortunate right now to be in Troy and see what happens here.
Where can people find more about Song City, about you, about your music?
Yeah, absolutely. Song City, you can find on songcitytroy.com is where you would get tickets. It's where you'd hear about upcoming things. So on there, you're going to see tickets for this Tuesday's showcase, which is our first one for season 4. And it has Kate McDonald, who's just a amazing, amazing, one of my favorite folk songwriters out there, along with Michael Eck, who's kind of a legendary folk songwriter around here. And then we also have John Glenn, who's part of kind of a new band out right now called Dayburn, but he was originally known for Stellar Young and for Like the Astronaut, and has actually played Song City a couple seasons ago. And now with this new album, I'm bringing him back to be part of that. And then something that I think is really interesting, and this falls into exploring songwriting from different genres, is Veena and Devesh Chandra, who are a mother and son Indian tabla and sitar duo, world renowned. Veena is known all over the world as an amazing sitar player, and her son Devesh is known as a tabla player. And I've seen them many times before. And Devesh is a friend of mine. And at some point, we had a conversation. I said, "Can you please explain to me how are these songs written? I have no idea how you would. I don't know how you play it, let alone how you would write it." And he began, and then I'm not going to give away the secrets, so you'll have to come to Song City for that. But he began to explain to me kind of the mathematics even behind how he follows his mother as she plays and where the songs are going. And I think that that's going to be really intriguing, um, to expand all of our minds about how they play and how they write. So it's a great lineup. So you can find tickets for that on songcitytroy.com. You can find information on both Facebook and Instagram at Song City Troy. Um, and or you can just find me at Jacob Alejandro drinking espresso, and I'll tell you more.
Scott, I really appreciate you doing this. Song City Season 4 kicks off this September, September 9th, 2025. And thank you so much for doing this. This was actually a lot of
Thank
fun.
you. Absolutely. Thank you for all you're doing here.